Hi everyone. So let's talk about some core concepts of Angular 2.0. So here we will talk about the module dependencies. We will be having a multi-module system. You can have like auth module, transaction module, payment module, but all will be defined in the root module. So root module will be aware of what all different sub-modules we have in the complete application like this. So in the imports, we will define all the other third-party modules, declaration all the components, provider all the services, and bootstrap whatever the component which we are bootstrapping to, right? So this is every Angular 2 is component based, and we will be just creating the hierarchy of trees of these different components. A simple component look like this. So we have already covered this, no need to explain much. I'm just going a little bit fast here. How we are talking about all these different components. So this is a toolbar component, a child component. So this is the parent component, and here we have defined as a child component toolbar component. So you can pass the data in the child components. A lot of things can happen. Every component has these life cycles, which we will talk about: ng on init, ng on destroy, ng on change. Whenever we bootstrap a component, we just need to use the platform browser dynamic.bootstrap module, and we will pass the root module of the application to bootstrap the application, right? So now let's come back to the life cycle of Angular component. So these are the different methods: ng on init, ng on destroy, do check, do changes, all these things. We can use these methods to do some intermediate task based on some events based on the initialization. So every component has a template, right? And in the template we are writing these kind of expressions. So these expressions are called interpolation, where we are trying to populate the value from ES6 class of the component props. So this is called a property binding, where we are trying to assign the value of this main menu from the ES6 component. Image URL also we can send from the component ES6 class. In the ES6 class we will just have these variables, and we will pass them to this template. So this is known as a property binding. Same as event binding, we can have an event system also. When you are clicking on in this division, we are just firing clicked event, and this is another custom event we have defined. So this is called as a handling the events. We can fire the core JavaScript event wrapped around these brackets. Okay, now we have a two-way data binding, combinations of property binding and event binding, and this is called as a banana box, and you will be able to have a two-way binding system for this variable, right? So you can achieve this. This particular syntax is equivalent to this system, where you are getting the u value from the property binding and also triggering this ng model event change. So whenever this model value is getting changed, it will assign the value u with the new event property, event value. So it's equivalent to this. So it's a combination of property binding and event binding. So ng model change event is triggered whenever the model value is getting changed, and once you are changing the model, so you assign the u value with the new value, whatever you have changed. Right, more examples, all the examples of property binding, event binding, two-way data binding, and here built-in structural directive ngif ng4. Right, so components are the directives without templates. So components, if you are writing some component without template, then it's more over a directive which is just talking about the behavior of a component. So three types of directive: structural, which is changing the DOM layout, right? Like ngif ng4. Based on these conditions, we will be just rendering these dynamic data onto the UI. Like ng4 is equivalent to ng repeat, ngif is equivalent to ngif in the Angular 1.x. Attribute directive is changing the behavior of the element like this. So here these are the attributes, right? Style.width.pixelity, just deciding what is the style, what is the size of that. So with the help of element reference in the directive, we can access the properties associated with that element. Here we have element reference and renderer. So this renderer will will set the styles, right? Render.set element style, and using this element we can access the background color. Element.native element dot background color, we can set it to yellow, and it will be help us to render the element. Now you can use this directive on any division anywhere in your component, anywhere in the application. My highlight, so it will change the background color to yellow, right? So this is so here we are just this is another directive. Here we are just trying to access the DOM and we are changing some property, right? So what we are doing, render.set new element styles, we always need to use the renderer whenever you wanted to do some kind of DOM manipulation. So always use renderer.set element style and define, update the element styles. Here we are accessing the native element and changing the background color to yellow. So here, if we are using a directive with a template, then it's known as a component. So here, this is how we will be using the components whenever we wanted to render the component. So components can change the data. I mean, we have the pipes also. Pipes will transform the input whatever we are getting. So it's like Angular 1.x filters. We have built-in pipes: get pipe, uppercase, lowercase, currency, and parent pipe. So here, this is a simple example of the pipe. We need to get the pipe transform from Angular core, implement the pipe transform, and we need to define this transform method. Here in this transform method, we will get that value. So here we are using the transform trim, right? So the trim means we just need to remove the spaces whatever we are going to show on the UI. So this is the trim pipe, right? So pipe can be a stateful or stateless. Stateful whenever you are getting the data actually from the async API. So here you can be, the pipe can be a pure functions or non-pure. Pure and non-pure, there are two different kind of pipes. And in the pipe, what we can have, we will be getting the data from some kind of API, like this is the fetch promise. So here we are returning a promise, and once we got the data, then only we are applying the transformation. So here we are just rendering the JSON data and we are showing it, and fetch is a type of promise. So async pipe will be like this. So you need to apply the fetch /JSON. This will wait until the promise has been resolved. So component state management, it's a basic how components communicate to each other. State is nothing but the data which we are transferring from one component to another component with the help of input and output. So with the help of input, we are sending the data. Output, we are handling the event from the child to parent, right? So the output event will be emitted with the help of event emitter. Property binding will always have this input annotations which we are getting from parent component. We can have the routing available. So in we are using router v3. A lot of changes has been done in the router of Angular 2. Now we have a stable router v3. For the routing, we can just define simple route as an array, and we can define the path and components, and we just pass that to the router module. So this routes is representing the routing everything. Now we just define the components. So this is a very basic. I mean, routing is in Angular 2 and router v3 is very simple. You just define the route, pass them for the route. It can be a for route or for children if you are defining the children routes also. So this is the only thing which you need to do, and then pass in the route module. Right? If you wanted to have a lazy loading in the routing, then you can do it like this. Whenever you are passing the path route, I will be loading the children with the lazy load. So you have defined the complete module itself. So on the initialization, it will not load these modules. Okay. So here we have defined for the children routes. Whenever you do a cat, these are the routing guards: can activate, can deactivate, and resolve, and load children. So can activate is only depends on this auth guard which we will define in the ESX class. So if this is returning true, only then we will be able to publish this particular route. So registering the routes, very simple. In the registering the routes in the imports, just define these routes. So whatever we have done here, import this, export this and import here, and put that in the imports. right? We have already processed the routes array from the routing module. That's it. Right, so now this is the how we are using the router link. It's a directive to just give a link. It is just indirectly generating href tag, okay, and it's a component based routing, right? And these components can use services to get the data. Every component can use it. So services, we need to inject them into the constructor. Either you can define this service only dependent to this, only for this component, otherwise you can put this service in the root module provider tag. Here if you are putting it here, data store is available only for this component, right? You can also so this is the global service, this is a local service to the component only. So this is the provider configurations and all. So concept recap, we talked about components, state life cycles, and state of a component, providers, router, directives, pipes, and template syntax, and component lifecycle. Other cool features you can look for is the Angular forms, Angular advanced routing, Angular observables with the RxJS, server-side rendering in Angular, and material design, and internationalization, and HTTP to connect to the backend APIs. Okay. So the tooling, in the tools you can write the code. We will be writing the code with the ES6 and TypeScript everywhere. You can also use a Dart, but that's not preferred way. We can use these a lot of different editors and this build system. In the build system, we obviously will be using system.js or Webpack and TypeScript as a transpiler. And here you can use Angular CLI. So we have seen that Angular CLI in the previous sections, how to use Angular CLI. And you can get started with app. Thanks everyone.